Welcome to the Anxious Love Coach podcast, a place for creating meaningful, conscious, secure, long-term partnerships. Here, we talk relationship anxiety and creating healthy, magnetic dynamics within partnership to help you feel confident and alive within committed partnership. My name is Natalie Kennedy, and I'm your host. I'm a relationship anxiety coach and meditation teacher. I've worked with hundreds of clients battling anxiety, and after experiencing extraordinary shifts in my own healing relative to partnership, now combine my lived personal experience and professional training to help others trust themselves within relationship and in their lives. I've been to the edge and back with my now husband from relationship anxiety and come out confidently to the other side. I want to pass the tools I've learned along to you to help you trust yourself in relationships and also create magnetic, hot dynamics with your partner. I believe lots of mainstream relationship advice today can make us anxious and dissatisfied. So let's jump in and normalize challenges that modern relationships and real people go through while also giving you tools to trust yourself, drop the shame, and alchemize your messy, twisted relational truths into profound inner wisdom and aliveness. If you haven't yet, be sure to join my communities over on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Anxious Love Coach. You can also request a 30-minute relationship anxiety assessment with me depending on availability, or ask me a question over on my website at www.anxiouslovecoach.com. I've also got a wonderful relationship anxiety meditation available to you as thanks for subscribing to my email list. Thanks for being here and enjoy this episode. Hello, welcome back. This is going to be a one-off episode that does not seemingly fit with the Anxious Love Coach brand. There is a small part of me cringing to record this episode, but it's also been widely requested. And it is the story of my miscarriage. So I'm going to start out with seemingly a million trigger warnings and let you know that this is going to be one of my messier episodes, both in the sense that I'm going to share a lot of paradoxical things. I'm going to share a lot of two things are true and they don't cancel each other out, and messy paradoxes that are hard to reconcile. But I'm also going to be sharing some gory details of my miscarriage. So if you do not want to hear gory details, this is probably not the episode for you. Also, if you've experienced a miscarriage, or especially a traumatic one, or if you've got a lot of sensitivity or grief and are not in the position to hear jokes, even morbid jokes about miscarriage, this episode may come across to you as extremely insensitive. Now, I say that because I don't want to be insensitive to your miscarriage at all. If you are extremely sensitive around your miscarriage, you may want to see a therapist and not listen to this episode, because I have been coping with my miscarriage through morbid levels of dark humor. So I just want to let you know that I'm not here to invalidate your experience. I'm here to share some messy qualities of my miscarriage. But if you're in a position to laugh about your miscarriage or hear some dark messiness around miscarriage, maybe you're going to enjoy this side of me that has erupted. When I initially found out I was going to miscarry, I wanted to keep this very private, but alas, as I started keeping this to myself, all of my creativity stunted. And I was thinking, really, universe, really, God, you're going to make me put this out there too? Do I get any privacy whatsoever? Or is this gift of sharing something you're going to require of me now in this circumstance as well? And as soon as I opened up about my miscarriage on the internet, I was flooded with love, but also I was shocked at the number of women that reached out to me and said, hey, I had one too. You're not alone, and this totally sucks, and nobody ever talks about it. And if you talked about it, I would absolutely listen to it, and please do talk about it. So there was a period of time where I was thinking, well, where do I put all these weird thoughts in my head? Where do I put all this strange content? And so I decided I'd put it here, and if people don't want to listen, they just won't. And for the small few, or surprisingly many, that want to hear my miscarriage story, which I really want to talk about very badly, for those of you that want to hear about it, let's talk about miscarriage. And I didn't think this was going to fit with relationship anxiety stuff, but I requested a little bit of coaxing from people that might have wanted to hear it online. And a bunch of women said, please talk about it. We want to hear about it. We've had experiences of miscarriage, and it's been messy emotionally and physically, and it's not talked about enough. And also, if you're talking about relationships, you're probably talking about marriage. If you're talking about marriage, you're probably talking about kids. If you're talking about kids, you're probably talking about miscarriage. So miscarriage is in the realm of relationships. And for the small niche inside of a niche, the miscarriage inside of the relationship anxiety niche, super tiny niche, but maybe there are some of you that have experienced it and you just want to feel validated. Maybe there are some of you that want to have kids and you're frightened of miscarriage. This might just be a story that you can add to your mental archive. Obviously, this is one story of many. If you go on Reddit, as I did, there are so many stories of traumatic miscarriages. And while my miscarriage did impact me, and I'm sure the experience of it will come up in the future many times, I have not chosen to label it as traumatic. It was challenging. But anyway, I wanted to talk about my miscarriage story. For my own creative outlet, for my own metabolization of my inner experience, to alchemize my inner experience into something that I can turn into art in the form of a podcast and sending it out to you, and whoever it serves, and whoever it doesn't serve, I'm sorry. If there's one episode you cancel me over, let it not be this one, because like I said, this is off-brand, and the level of dark humor I plan on sharing here is not typical of me. This is a side of me that erupted after the miscarriage, and it scares even me. I don't know what to do with this side of myself. So let that be so. So just from start to finish, it's a beautiful story. It's strange to use the word beautiful, but now that it's all over, I look back and I think, man, if I had the option of not having a miscarriage and having a miscarriage, I think I might actually pick the miscarriage, because I actually learned so much from it. It was such a humbling, incredible experience to touch death in such a way. And again, some of the things that are coming out of my mouth feel so strange to say, but I don't know, maybe I'm going to be the first one to say it, and maybe a bunch of you are going to be like, dude, I felt the same way. Or you're just going to think I'm a freaking weirdo, or even a psycho. Psycho is a loaded word. Anyway, like I said, this is not the episode to nitpick my language. This is just me processing my experience in my way. So please just give me a lot of grace. I just went through a big loss, and I'm coping with it the best way I can and hoping it serves anybody. So this is not the episode to focus on semantics, because I'm going to say things that are going to offend people potentially. Like I said, if you have sore spots around your miscarriage, do not listen to this episode. It's going to trigger you. It could upset you. It's going to feel insensitive. I simultaneously felt grief, and yet there were so many wonderful moments, and I felt very privileged to make contact with death. And at the same time, it was a real griever. I really grieved a lot. So I found out I was pregnant on October 7th, which coincidentally was also the day of the Hamas attacks in Israel. And so I will remember that day for the rest of my life, because the entire social media was exploding with rage, and I was just in shock. I was thinking, holy shit, I'm pregnant. Oh my God. And it was strange, because I felt this pull to be speaking about worldly events, and yet everything inside me just wanted to pull inward. So there was an awkward phase where I actually did have people messaging and saying, why aren't you saying something? And I was like, because I'm pregnant, but I don't want to tell anyone about that right now. So I just stayed silent. I didn't know what to do with myself. Even if I wasn't pregnant, I'm not sure I would talk about it, because as I mentioned a couple episodes back, I only started reading about this political situation a month and a half ago, so I'm in no position to speak on such a highly charged, nuanced topic. If you want politics, this is probably not the account to go to. There are plenty of people who have been researching and in on this dynamic for decades, and those are the people you should listen to, not me. Anyway, so October 7th, I got pregnant, and I was definitely going inward for months. The first trimester, I was exhausted. I wasn't able to do anything. I wasn't able to do tango. I wasn't going to Pilates. I was just so tired. But I was also really excited. Press and I were overjoyed. It was a beautiful experience. And it was a beautiful experience of thinking I was pregnant. And then pretty much the day before Thanksgiving, or a couple days before Thanksgiving, I had some twinging on my right side, and I thought it might have been something that I was reading was called round ligament pain. It felt kind of like I had my appendix removed many years ago, so I thought maybe there was some inflammation on the right side or some scar tissue that was getting bumped or whatever. Anyway, I decided to be smart and get it checked out. I went to see an ultrasound, and at almost 10 weeks, lo and behold, they found an empty gestational sac. And me being the dumbass I was, again, I'm not judging, but I didn't know. The tech was like, there's a sac, but there's no baby. And I was like, so I'm still pregnant, right? I shouldn't laugh, but in hindsight, I'm like, man. And obviously it was a devastating moment, and Press and I went out to the car and we were just in shock and numb, and we were crying and just holding each other. I texted my midwife, who I was in touch with, and sent her the picture of the ultrasound, and she said, I am so sorry, you're almost certainly going to miscarry. And at that point, I had a few choices. I am all for Western medicine when you need it. Thank God it exists. A lot of women died in childbirth and died of cancer. And having come from the pharmaceutical industry and then swung the opposite extreme into the yoga world, I've been in the extremes of both sides, and I am greatly appreciative for both. We need both. So I fluctuate between natural, holistic, and the medical methods. So when I was speaking with my midwife, if I was asking her, like, do I need to get a procedure? Is it going to be natural? What should I do? And she said, there's many different directions you can go. Some women prefer to like just get it over with, and you can get a DNC, which is basically where they kind of, it's an abortion pretty much. And they basically vacuum you out. It's the cleanest, quickest method. The other option is you can take some medicine that will essentially induce an abortion. Or you can go natural, au naturel, and just wait it out. And I was very tempted to take the medicine and speed it up, because once you find out that the pregnancy is inviable, you're waiting for your body to process it, and you don't know how long it's going to be. And from what I'd heard, if you wait too long, you can get infected. And like, I didn't know how long was too long. I had some trust in my body that if something was wrong, it would tell me. I would feel it. I'm very attuned with my body, but sometimes we can be wrong about that. So I'm always open to being wrong. But I decided to wait it out and just see, like, okay, if I pass like 12 weeks or something, obviously it goes without saying, but do not use this podcast as a means for medical advice. That could literally get you killed. I'm just sharing my experience. So do not listen to Natalie and decide that that's what you're going to do. No, you need to get other opinions, talk to doctors, like actually talk to a medical professional. But after speaking to a midwife, I decided to wait. I decided that I would wait until 12 weeks for me personally. Just before 11 weeks, 10 weeks and like one day or something, I started spotting. And then around, I think, 10 weeks and 4 days or 5 days, I started getting like cramping. And I was thinking, maybe that is it. Maybe we are starting. And so they told me that it was going to be like a heavy period. So, and when I say they, I mean like the internet. And I also spoke to my aunt, who had several miscarriages, and she said, just expect a lot of blood and a lot of tissue, and it's scary, but you'll be okay. She said, if you get a fever, you start vomiting, go see a doctor. So I thought, okay, all right. So I'm gonna try to do this thing at home at 10 and a half weeks. And I'm just gonna trust that if something feels wrong, that I'll go to the doctor, but hopefully everything's okay. So at 10 weeks and 4 days, I am laying in bed. I wake up in the morning and cramps start coming. And I'm thinking, okay, it kind of feels like period cramps. I have endometriosis, a very mild case. So I was thinking, okay, it's going to hurt. I know how to breathe through this. I know how to take painkillers if I need to. As I'm lying in bed and the days go on by, the pain is starting to escalate. And it's all of a sudden it escalates beyond a point of what endometriosis felt like. And I was like, oh God. And I responded by doing what I did when I would get my period pain, which is lie in bed and get really, really warm and drink some hot tea. But I started to feel the pain mounting in an almost exponential manner. And that's when I started to feel a little bit scared. And I was thinking, uh-oh. But it was a different kind of pain. It was a searing, searing pain. And some of you guys are listening and your jaw's going to drop and you're going to be terrified of miscarriage. And in hindsight, it was doable. But what I was trying to do was treat it like period pain, not realizing that these were contractions. This is not period pain. This was a contraction happening in my body. So I was not working with the contraction, which was what was making it worse. And at some point, the pain was so unbearable. And also what was really annoying is that I was having what I'm pretty sure were contractions, because at 10 weeks, you go into a little mini labor. And I was thinking, oh my God, okay. So I had a little burst of intuition that said, okay, we can't just lie down in bed. We need to move somehow. So I got on my mat and I did some stretching and that didn't work. And I was just very bewildered that I was not bleeding all that much, but the pain was more than a period. And by some burst of intuition, I decided to go into the shower. And at that point, I got into a really, really deep squat, like we might call it an Asian squat or like a yogi deep squat, like where my butt's by my heels. But then I leaned my back against the shower wall. So I'm in this deep squat by my heels and I'm leaning against the wall. And in that moment, I decide to do consciousness exercise. And I asked myself, okay, Natalie, what are you aware of? And I didn't really feel any emotions, maybe a little bit of trepidation and fear, thinking, okay, what's going to happen here? Is my body just going to break in half? Oh my God. Obviously, I had this enormous pain in my womb space, and I decided to stay with it because that's what you do in consciousness exercise. You identify what's going on inside you, and then you stay with it. And not only did I decide to stay with it, but I also decided to focus on the pain, and I focused so intently on finding the epicenter of the pain, which is something I've done with my clients when they are experiencing emotional pain. So I thought, okay, let's take a somatic approach to miscarriage because I don't know what else to do because I don't know. So I just pretended I was an animal going into labor, and I went into this goddess squat in the shower. I turned on the hot water. I had bought eucalyptus from Trader Joe's, like fresh eucalyptus bouquet earlier in the week. And I just hung it in the shower and turned the water on real warm. And so the eucalyptus steam was filling up the shower, which was really nice. If you have a miscarriage, I recommend it. For me, it was great. It made it more floral and pleasant. So I felt for the epicenter of the pain in my womb, and I found it. I found the epicenter, and it was very difficult to not check out, but I was determined. And also some part of me was like, maybe I can talk about this in the podcast someday. Here I am. And when I found the epicenter of the pain, I suddenly realized that the epicenter of the pain was attempting to move down. But because I was in pain, I was trying to clench my body in defense. I was trying to, when for those of you that have really painful periods, you know how hard it can be to relax your muscles because your body on some level wants to resist the pain. And so it does it by fighting it. And that means maybe you clench your pelvic floor muscles in resistance to your pain. And unfortunately, that's the last thing you want to do because that's part of what's contributing to the cramping. So when I was leaning up against the wall in my deep squat, I found the pain and I noticed that the epicenter was attempting to move down my body. And every time I clenched my pelvic floor muscles, it would force it back up. And really what I perceive I was doing, some of you guys are doctors out here listening to this episode, and I would love to be corrected on what's actually happening, but this was what I perceived. This is what it felt like from my side. And maybe those of you that are in the medical world, you can DM me on Instagram and tell me if I'm off or tell me if I'm on. Again, this is purely perception on my end. But I really felt like there was a downward direction of my pain that was attempting to happen, and I was resisting it. So I thought, okay, what happens if I don't resist? Because when I was in bed lying down and I had pain, I was resisting the pain. That's probably why I wasn't bleeding. It's like I was squeezing my pelvis in some way, or my pelvic floor muscles. So anyway, I'm leaning against the wall. I'm squatting, and I decide to relax my muscles and just lean against the wall, and I relax my muscles. And from my embodied wisdom training, I like women's wisdom training, I knew that the mouth and throat are connected to the yoni, the portal, the vagina. So I decide to open my mouth and open my throat and make noise, not like a scream, but just like like a guttural, open throat, open mouth, like as if you're trying to open up your throat to like deep throat in a blowjob, like open up your throat real wide. And I just intuitively felt the urge to like really open my mouth and open my throat, which I'd read was very helpful for labor and birth. So I decided to do that in a miscarriage, because why not? It's basically a birth. You're just, it's still a birth. It's just there's no baby on the other side. There's no alive baby. So, but I figured, the mechanism's still the same. You gotta eject it. So I'm sitting there, I'm leaning against the wall. I am focusing on the pain, and I open my mouth and my throat. I make a sound, and I start to attempt to relax the muscles around the epicenter of my pain. And I all of a sudden start to notice that the pain moves down, 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 down. And then all of a sudden, big gush. And the first big gush of blood and tissue come out. And it is not a period, you guys. It is not a period. And all of a sudden, again, okay, we're going to get to the gory part, you guys. If you don't want the gore, get out for your own sanity. So all this blood and stuff comes out, and I'm weirdly fascinated by it, and I'm kind of appalled by the fact that I'm weirdly fascinated by it. And I wish I was like deeply sad in that moment. But what happened is, as soon as the gush happened, all that pain went away suddenly. And I was thinking, I'm not in pain anymore. And it was such a relief. And I realized, that was a contraction. The pain was a contraction. It wasn't like a period cramp. Because I don't know about you guys, but when I get period cramps, they just don't go away for like 24 to 36 hours. I'm just in pain nonstop, no matter what I do. Fortunately, changing my diet and my lifestyle has helped so much. And the products I use, and I take some supplements that help keep my hormones in balance. And that's helped a lot. I've reduced my period cramps a lot. But when I do have them, they're just consistent. It's not like the pain comes and goes. But with the miscarriage, all of a sudden I had the contraction, and then I worked with it through my single pointed focus on the epicenter of the pain and relaxing the muscles around the pain. And then when the gush would happen and all this tissue would come out, all of a sudden the pain would disappear. And I was thinking, is that how it's going to work? And then, a couple minutes later, another contraction would build up. And it took me a while to get into the flow of contraction, focus on the pain, focus on bringing the pain down, relax the muscles around my labia, let the gush happen, relax and breathe and recover for the next couple minutes until the next contraction would come. And through this, I developed a little flow where I was just living in the shower for the day. At one point, Preston's parents, because we're living with Preston's parents right now for a short time being, for a couple months, they were like, the shower is clogged. Do you think Natalie can move to the upstairs shower? So Preston had to come in and find me in a puddle of blood and be like, hey, they would prefer you use the upstairs shower. So I'm like, okay. So I had to not unclog the shower. I didn't know how to unclog it at that moment. Later on, I unclogged it because I refused to let someone else unclog the shower for me after having had a miscarriage in their shower. So I'm like, yeah, sure. Please don't go in the shower while the shower is like taking its time to drain because it's clogged. But I didn't mind because that was the last thing I cared about in that moment. So anyway, I moved to the upstairs shower. I bring my eucalyptus with me. And I continue having a miscarriage. And I found this like flow of just releasing tissue and just, I was amazed at how my body just knew exactly what to do. And I just had to get out of the way. I just had to relax and let my body release this and shed everything. So I had a little Tupperware. I have a very spiritual aunt that said you might want to bury some of the tissues that you find if you feel called to do so. You can have a little ritual and give the little spirit a blessing or whatnot. So I had a little Tupperware with me in the shower, and sometimes I would collect pieces that I would intend to bury later. So the worst of it lasted about an hour and a half, where I was just in this flow of contraction, pain, release, relief, wait until the next contraction, and repeat. So it was just ongoing for about 2 hours. And I think I peaked at around 2 p.m. I started having contractions around 10 a.m. I peaked. The worst of the pain was maybe around 2 p.m. By 3 p.m., most of it was over, and I was exhausted. My husband was fortunately just bringing me electrolytes all day long, which was so sweet. But pretty much all day, I was just an animal in labor, it felt like. But it was a sad labor. It was a labor where there's no baby at the end, but it's still a labor. It's just, instead of looking forward to a birth or a live thing at the end, it doesn't feel like a marathon where you get to the finish line and you're like, yeah, it's a marathon, but you're waiting to feel relief. You're waiting to feel a sense of closure. And eventually the contractions became further and further apart, and so I was releasing less and less tissue. By the end of it, I would say around 4 or 5 p.m., I was ready to get up and walk around and eat a little bit. And I had some cramps, but they were much less. By then, I just put on like a giant pad, and if I had a contraction come, I would just go to the bathroom. I told you this, guys, this episode was going to be graphic. Anyway, so the worst of it was over. I was very relieved. I was still bleeding, but Preston's mom, bless her, was so worried about me. She'd never had one before, so she didn't really know how to guide me or anything. But I was thinking, I did it. I'm done. I survived. Everything's okay. Nothing felt wrong. I just felt tired and I'm kind of sore and exhausted, but nothing felt wrong. I wasn't getting any urgency in my body. Also, I forgot to mention this. There was one moment, I would say a span of maybe 10 minutes, where I bumped into fear. And it was when the pain was so intense and I hadn't quite found the flow yet where I could follow the pain. I was still resisting the pain around 1 o'clock. Again, I peaked at about 2, but around 1 is when the pain started to get super, super bad, and I hadn't quite figured out that I could work with it yet. I was still resisting it and thinking that, oh God, I'm just going to have to tolerate this. And, yes, it was a toleration, but I mean that in the sense of I'm just going to have to grunt through this and it's going to be awful. But once I figured out how to work with the pain instead of resist it, everything became very manageable. As soon as I figured out how to work with my mouth, with my breath, every time the pain would reach my labia, I would open my mouth really, really wide. I would go, ha, and really try to open my throat because, again, the throat is connected to the vagina and the yoni. So as soon as I figured out that I could use my throat and that would help open up my PC muscles, and that's when everything would come gushing out. As soon as I figured that out, things got easier. But until then, I was just tightening my body. And that was part of the reason I think I was tightening, was because I had fear coming up. And I finally remembered to do that consciousness exercise and check in. Okay, where am I feeling this? Am I willing to feel the pain to the extent that it's there and not check out? That was a real test of courage for me. And I had to access a part of myself. I had to step into a portal that I have never stepped into. And the part of me that I had to access in order to be able to have the capacity to hold that type of pain, it changed me forever. And I'm grateful, and it's a very strange thing to say. It's strange to say that experience deepened me and forced a part of me to be born that had never been there before. And I think that's a large part of why it was not such a traumatic experience. So anyway, when I bumped into the fear, I just remember asking myself the question, Natalie, who do you want to be right now? Who do you want to be? And what I wanted, I had the option of thinking, oh God, maybe I need to go to the hospital. But there was a little voice in me that said, you're not in danger. This is just different. You've never experienced this before. It's new. But there wasn't a sense of fight or flight. There wasn't an urgency. There was just fear of the unknown. And in that moment, I decided, who do you want to be in response to the unknown? Do you want to open your mouth and breathe and trust? Or do you want to freak out and panic and confirm that your fear is in control? Again, some of you listening are, might be thinking, this could be danger. This could be a dangerous message, especially for people who might need to go to the hospital or something like that. You are correct, 100%. That's why I'm naming my experience only. But a little bit of context also, and this is not my favorite thing to share on the internet, but it's an important piece of context, and I'm an open book. I don't have shame around this. But part of the reason we were here in the US is because we had to come here. We came home early because Preston's grandparent, one of his grandpa got sick, and we were going to be abroad for 10 and a half months. We left in end of January, and we weren't going to come back until December, like end of December. So we decided not to have health insurance, and we would just pay out of pocket like when we're in Colombia, which would be much cheaper than paying for health insurance in the US that we wouldn't use. But alas, Preston's grandpa got sick, so we ended up coming back in September, and then I got pregnant. Oops. And then I had a miscarriage. Oops. So the last thing I wanted was, to end up in the hospital with no health insurance. So that's also a variable that I just want to put into, is to take into consideration. It is not an ideal situation. I was ready to go to the hospital if I had to, but I really didn't want a giant hospital bill. So that is one of the reasons I decided to go all natural, because I didn't want to pay out of pocket. So I was very much hoping that I didn't run into an emergency. Obviously, if I did, I would have to. But, when I bumped into fear during the miscarriage and I had that overwhelming pain, I thought, okay, is it worth going to the hospital? Is this a pain that should send me to the hospital? And there was a voice inside that was like, no, it's not the kind of pain that sends you to the hospital. This is just different and unfamiliar and scary. And what happens if I were to just trust the intuitive impulses of my body? It was never mental. It wasn't like my brain was telling my body what to do in English. It's just, I felt the urge to open my mouth. I felt the urge to make sound. I felt the urge to lean up against the wall. I felt the urge to relax my PC muscles. Those were all just messages from my body. And it's thanks to practices like consciousness exercise and Vipassana, which I did years ago, that taught me how to zoom in on a body part and zoom into a sensation and really stay with it without checking out. These are tools that in hindsight, I am so grateful for. And you would never know that you would need it. When you're in meditation and you're sitting in silence and you're sitting with, your anxiety, you might not feel like you're being productive when you're doing a mindfulness practice. But one day when you're having a miscarriage or something like that, or you're giving birth even, and all of a sudden you know what to do because you've done it in meditation, you bet I was like, man, thank God I invested my time and energy into these skills. I was so grateful. I knew exactly what to do. I knew exactly how to listen to my body because I've been studying this my whole life, the last decade plus. I've been studying the last decade how to listen to my body. And you bet I pulled those tools out. Thank God they were there. So the worst of it was about an hour long. And that's when I was just working with the pain and just having contractions that were like 2-3 minutes in between. But they were productive contractions. They were contractions that completed thanks to me not resisting them. So it moved fairly quickly. And my fear was something that I leaned into and I said, yeah, of course we're scared. I was very compassionate with myself. It was one of those beautiful moments where I realized I have a healthy relationship with my fear. I responded to it with understanding. I responded to it with compassion. I asked it, is this a fear saying go to the hospital, or is this a fear of the unknown, but actually I'm safe? And if you experience relationship anxiety, it's a similar type of fear. It's like, is this fear saying I'm in the wrong relationship? Is this fear saying that I'm going to go through a divorce? Is this a fear saying, oh God, these are genuine red flags? Or is this just the fear of the unknown, but actually, if I look around, there's no tiger chasing me. I'm not in danger. So it's important to be able to make that discernment. You need to be able to feel your body, acknowledge it, respond with love, respond with curiosity, but then you have to actually use your brain and discern whether you're actually in a dangerous situation or not. In my case, I didn't sense that I was in a dangerous situation. I was just nervous because this was new. And it's important to validate your fear. And then you decide, who do I want to be in this situation? In my case, I chose to surrender and trust, in part because I genuinely felt I wasn't in danger, and also because I did not want to go to the hospital with no insurance. So the worst of it's over. From like 5 to 10 p.m., I'm resting. I have some a contraction that comes every half hour, and I go to the toilet and it all comes out. And I'm thinking I'm done, and I've collected some tissue, and I'm thinking, great, I'm done. And then around 10:30 at night, I'm getting ready for bed and another contraction comes on. And it's one of these annoying contractions that's just like not going away. When you have to sneeze and it's just like, the sneeze is not coming. It was an annoying contraction, an annoying pain that even when I got on the toilet, it wasn't working. And I was just like trying to move around, and I got on my yoga mat and tried to do some hip circles, and I was making some noise and nothing was working. And I was just like, ugh. So I took some like Tylenol, I think, or maybe I don't know if it was Tylenol, might have been some other painkiller. And it didn't do anything. So I had a cramp from 10 to 11. And for whatever reason, again, I decided to listen to my body. And I decided to do another squat, but I leaned, and at this point I'm wearing like a basically giant diaper, and I'm leaning back against my bed, and there is a coffee table right in front of me, and just I don't know what impulse inside of me, God, spirit, source, I don't know, some little impulse guided me to grab a hold of the coffee table leg that was in front of me. So I'm basically pushing my back against the side of the bed, or the equivalent of a wall. I'm squatting, leaning back against it. I pull on a table leg and I kind of bear down and I push. And you, oh my God. And I basically take a giant, this is the part I did not want to share, but this is what everyone wanted me to share, because on the internet, I was like, there's parts of it that are really gross. And I basically feel myself take a giant shit. And I'm like, no. And it's so big that it flies out of my giant diaper. And all of a sudden I'm like, ah! And I throw my hands down to my pants and I grasp it and hold it, and I run to the bathroom, and it's not a shit, it's a placenta. And I'm just like, whoa! And it's huge. It's like the size of my palm. And I am simultaneously so shocked, so disgusted. Is not quite the right word. I was just like, whoa, that's gory. That's disgusting. That would disgust anybody. That would disgust most people. The placenta is a giant organ. The placenta is like a whole organ that feeds your baby. And even if you didn't have a baby or you just had the gestational sac like I did, your body didn't know that for a while, and it just continued to build a placenta for the entire first trimester. That's why you're so tired the first trimester, because you're making a new organ out of scratch, which is so cool, by the way. I thought that was amazing. It's like I'm basically making an organ just like a liver or a stomach. I made a placenta. I made this thing that feeds a baby. So I'm holding my placenta in my hand, and I'm just like, whoa. A lot of people don't realize that when you do like some kind of, if you do natural childbirth and it's not rushed and you don't get like a C-section or something, you actually have two births. You have the birth of the baby and then you have a birth of a placenta. And I just thought that the placenta had gotten disintegrated and that all the tissue that I passed before somehow included the placenta. I didn't realize that it was going to pass as a intact thing. So I was just absolutely shocked. And I was just staring. I think I stared at my placenta in my hand, just my bloody placenta in my hand for like 30, 45 minutes. I just like stared at it. I was like, I made that? And there was this weird fascination. It was after I birthed the placenta, all the pain stopped. I didn't have any more contractions. I didn't have any more pain. And that was in part, I believe, what allowed for me to have such a cathartic experience. When the placenta was birthed, I finally felt complete. Now, in the days that followed, my hormones went kind of crazy and I grieved a lot. There was one day where I grieved all day long. Anytime I had a free moment, if I was in the car, I was crying. If I was filling up my water bottle at the kitchen sink, I was crying. If I was laying in bed, I was crying. It was just, I had one day of just grieving really, 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 really hard. But the birth of the placenta was what allowed me to feel finished. Now, mind you, when the placenta came out, it was like 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. And I had planned to bury whatever I collected in a ritual. I wanted this to be sacred. And I didn't, so I was thinking, yeah, but it's so late. I'm so tired. I've been working my body all day. So I put my placenta into that Tupperware. And by this point, the Tupperware was almost too small. I didn't realize the placenta would be so big at almost 11 weeks. Oh my goodness. I was shocked and fascinated. And I like took a picture that I didn't show anybody but my best friend. And that's only because she begged to see it because she's also gross like me. And so I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm so tired. And I was still too tired to like go bury it. And it was also really cold. And also it was a full moon that day, which is kind of interesting. So I put the placenta into the Tupperware and I'm too tired to go outside and bury it. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe in an hour or maybe in 2 hours, I'll go out and bury it and I'll go to the park or something like that. Because I didn't want to throw it down the toilet because A, it's an organ, it's solid, it would probably clog it. And also I think there's no reverence in that. I didn't want to throw it in the trash because I wanted to honor it in a sacred way. But I also wasn't up to like put the Tupperware in the fridge where Preston's parents would discover it the next morning. It's like, what in the grass-fed Natalie weirdness is that? Like, that wasn't up for that. But I also wasn't up to just like leave a warm placenta in my bedroom overnight. That just felt creepy. So the only option felt like before I go to bed, which at that point was when I finally got tired and felt like I had enough energy to walk, was like 1:20 in the morning. And that's when I got Preston and I said, hey, I need to go bury the placenta. And he's like, what? I was like, yeah, I just took a giant shit that was a placenta. I need to go bury it because I don't want to put this in your parents' fridge. I really don't think they would like to wake up to that. So he's like, okay. So he drives me to the park and it's freezing. It's so cold. I mean, it's Southern California, so it's not like Wisconsin freezing. And I know Wisconsin freezing, but it's still cold. And I've just had a miscarriage. I'm exhausted. I'm bleeding still, but it's not like it's now, by this point, it's just like a period. I'm bleeding like I'm on my period. It's not there's no tissue coming out anymore. After the placenta, pretty much there was no more tissue. So I'm at the park. I have my like Tupperware and I'm realizing just the extent of my exhaustion. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I don't have the energy to shovel a hole. I can't. But I'm not willing to go back and put this in the fridge and wait until I have energy. And I'm at the park already. So I go and I find a bush and I put I bless my placenta and I thank God, the universe, for touching me with a pregnancy because it changed me so deeply. And I also thank God for touching me with death because death is just as big of a teacher as pregnancy is. Loss teaches us more than I think anything can. And I found this strange gratitude to be blessed with a passing or a death. I found a morbid fascination with the whole experience. And I even found it to be somewhat pleasurable to experience just how in tune I could be with my body. So every time there was a gush and I was releasing tissue, I would say, thank you. Thank you, God, or thank you, universe, for cleaning me out. Thank you for deciding that this pregnancy was not viable and not forcing it to stay if it wasn't meant to be. Thank you for just using me as a vehicle. I felt very, very grateful. So I said my blessings and I said, may you be returned to where you came from. Thank you for touching me. Thank you for blessing me. Thank you for the lessons I've learned today on surrender and trust. And you've deepened me. And I will, even if I never get pregnant again, I will be grateful for this experience because of what it taught me. And then I put threw the placenta underneath the bush. It was like a low to the ground bush, so it's not like it was really deep. And there's going to be some people out there that are probably like, that is really unethical. You're right. It probably was very unethical. And I didn't know what else to do. And I just had a miscarriage and my brain was probably not making the most logical of decisions. It needed to be buried somewhere. So I tried to do it in the most discreet way I knew how in a suburb in California. So I threw it under a bush and I did my best to cover it with a bunch of leaves. So that was that. And then I kind of looked up at the moon and I smiled and I cried a little bit. And then I walked back to the car and we came back home and I went to bed and I slept really, really well. And then I woke up the next morning and I thought, did I really throw an organ that I spent 3 months building under a bush in Orange County, California? And then I just imagined some really high class lady walking her Maltipoo or something, her like fancy little poodle. And I just imagined her little poodle or her little Maltese discovering my placenta under a bush and just horrifying some rich lady with a nice manicure. And I just imagined a Maltese dog holding my placenta in its mouth and just like the lady screaming in terror. And I had that image in my head and I just started laughing and cackling. And I thought, man, this is wrong. This is wrong to laugh about. And yet it was so cathartic to laugh about. And I told Preston about my imaginings and he was hooting and hollering. And we were thinking, man, is it okay that we're laughing about this? And I also started to notice that the emotions that I was having after the miscarriage were not so black and white. I felt so much grief and I was crying so much. And especially when I opened up on Instagram and so many of you contacted me to say you went through the same thing and it was so sad. I felt so validated, so heard. And I think when you allow yourself to feel an emotion, it moves through, but then new emotions come up afterwards. It's like you have an emotional cue. It's like, okay, now I felt the grief, now what? And the things I started to feel afterwards were confusing to me. One of them being relief. While I was pregnant, I was so excited and so happy, but I also remember grieving the loss of a version of me, like an autonomous version of me. There was time when I started to feel changes in my body. I started to feel constantly bloated. All of a sudden I couldn't fit my bras or my pants anymore. And I was grieving like my body. I was grieving my energy levels. I couldn't work as much as I had been before when I was pregnant. I was just too exhausted. I couldn't go to tango. I was grieving tango. I was like, I had no energy to go to tango anymore, and I was devastated by that. I missed my old life for a while, and that's another confusing pregnancy emotion. It's like you're simultaneously so grateful to be pregnant. You're so grateful to be a vessel for this new spirit that's going to be birthed through you. But at the same time, you're grieving the loss of your independence. And lost the pregnancy, I was so sad and like wanted to be pregnant again. But at the same time, I was relieved to have my body back. So that was strange. And yet it makes so much sense, doesn't it? We always want what we don't have. And then when we do get the thing that we wish we had, we want the other thing. So it's like if you're in a relationship with someone and you wish you were with someone else, if you were to break up with the person you're with now and go pursue the other relationship, you would miss the relationship you were in before, because now the things that you used to have, you don't have because you're with this other person. So you gain some, you lose some. And this is in part what miscarriage taught me, that you can feel lots of conflicting emotions. I even had really dark emotions. Like I thought about some things in my past that I did wrong, someone I wronged, and I had a thought like, oh, this is my karma. And I actually felt a weird relief around that thought. Like, I'm paying for something. I'm cleaning up something I did in the past, whether it was a past life or something now. And some people might take that and find that to be not helpful at all. And if it's not, don't shame yourself. Don't take that on. It was just a useful perspective for me. So some part of me chose to see the miscarriage as some kind of karma that I was clearing, some kind of atonement. And I found some kind of relief in that. Some kind of karma is cleared. I've fulfilled some contract. And I guess that's my way of making meaning out of the experience. Life is inherently meaningless, but humans can give it meaning, and that's the meaning I made out of it. So who knows, maybe some of you guys are listening and you can take some pieces of my story and add meaning to your own. But after the miscarriage, I found that I was able to cry, and I was also able to laugh. And I was surprised by how after when my grief was so big. I remember talking about it on Instagram, like, everyone get ready for a bunch of dark humor, because I just felt so heavy and so dark. I thought that I was just going to have dark humor for a year. Actually, that didn't happen. I shared on Instagram, and then I grieved for about a day. Embarrassingly, I grieved really hard for one day. And then I woke up the next morning and I was done grieving. And ever since then, I've been happy. I've been recovered. I've been spunky. I've been unapologetically myself. I've been more authentic. I've been swearing more. I've been laughing about dark things. And somehow I feel really happy, and I feel so grateful to be alive. I feel so grateful to have been pregnant for 3 months. I feel so grateful to have had a miscarriage, because I feel so much deeper of a person. I have so much more self-trust. That miscarriage reinforced my trust in my body. I look back and I think, holy shit, I did that all by myself. Now, if I were to, I think when I finally give birth, I'm not interested in doing a free birth, but I do want to do a home birth with a midwife and all of that, because I still want the support and the option of going the medical system. But I also want to give myself the opportunity to have an ecstatic birth. And, at 10 weeks, it's not an emergency to necessarily have a miscarriage, unless you are like high risk or something. Like I said, talk to your doctor. Don't listen to anxious love coach to make decisions. But my midwife basically gave me the go ahead to go the natural route if I wanted to. And she stayed in touch with me throughout the entire day. And I believe that because I honored my body and decided to go the natural route, that I was able to have a full beginning, middle, and end to my grieving process. The miscarriage allowed me to process my grief in a physical way, and then also in an emotional way. I think if I had gone the medical route, not that there's anything wrong with it, and I don't judge anyone, because I was very tempted to go the medical route. I thought, man, I would just love to get this over with. I hate waiting for the miscarriage to happen. What if something goes wrong while I'm waiting? These are all valid fears. They're not unfounded. So I thought, I could just be done and just get a D&C. But I didn't want to pay for it. And also, I also thought that if I were to go that route, that I am not so sure I would be treated with the level of reverence that I would like. And I understand that that's a very privileged desire to have. It's a privileged take to be able to be treated with reverence in your medical process, in your birth or in your miscarriage. You know, that's unlikely. Unfortunately, if you go into the medical system, it's still a business. The healthcare system is still a business. And so they need to be efficient. And where they're trying to be efficient, they may cut corners in the sense that the medical professionals may cut corners spiritually. In terms of safety, you may get out of there alive and fine, and you'll have peace of mind. But spiritually, I think the medical system cuts corners. They may not have time to guide you through a ritual for your grief. You know, they don't have time. There's too many people. There's too many people to manage. I don't blame them. And I had the option of going the natural route. I had no symptoms that indicated that I was high risk or anything like that. So I chose to trust that I could do this on my own. And I think in doing so, I reinforced my belief in myself on a level I never have had access to before. So I put this out there to not say that like, oh, this is how your miscarriage should go, or here's how to have a miscarriage. This is not a how to have a miscarriage podcast. This is here's how my miscarriage went, and this is exactly how I would have liked to have had a miscarriage, because I got to be with myself. I got to know myself on a deep level. I got to access new pockets of sensation in my body. I got to access new layers of consciousness in my body. I reached a deeper state of self-trust that I've never accessed in my life. And I wish that aspect of miscarriage for people. I think if I were to have a D&C, I would be vacuumed out, and I might not have ever seen the placenta. I might not have ever gotten to just hold my placenta and stare at it for an hour. I don't think that would happen in a hospital. I don't think I would have that option. But staring at my placenta and just marveling at this creation, this thing that my body made, that allowed me to have a catharsis, a really cathartic experience. It created a sense of completion. It allowed me to feel the beginning, middle, and ending of my pregnancy fully. And I think if I had gone to get a D&C or I had rushed the process with medicine, I am not so sure I would have had the same experience. Maybe I would have, but I don't think so. Again, I'm sure there's people out there that had a D&C and are like, that's what worked for them. And that's the nice thing about having autonomy, is you can make a decision. And when you trust yourself, you can make a decision that's polar opposite to mine and feel good about it. That's the beauty of trusting yourself. You don't need to make the same decision as me. It's called self-trust, not other trust. Self-trust means you make your own decisions and you trust those decisions. And you also trust the emotions that come up as a result of those decisions. If you had a traumatic miscarriage, or you had a miscarriage that went in a way that you look back on and you regret, and maybe it was traumatizing, or maybe it lacked reverence and you wish you had a different experience, I encourage you to feel the emotions that you still have around that. And please know that the emotions that you feel around your miscarriage, if you had one, they are processable emotions, and you do not need to feel traumatized forever. You don't need to feel regret. I heard a quote recently that, do you feel regret for pooping your diaper when you were a baby? No, of course not. You didn't know any better. So how could you berate yourself for pooping your diaper as a baby when you didn't know better? Now you know better, so you're not going to poop your diaper. You know, and maybe in the past you took a route that you thought you should take, but in hindsight, you kind of wish you took another path. Again, you had a different level of consciousness, a different amount of information back then. So don't judge yourself for a second. So I just share my story because I feel very proud of myself, and I feel very proud of how I handled it. I feel grateful for the tools that I had. And that's just my story. So don't expect your story to be the same. It could go the complete opposite direction, but I feel very complete around this. I'm not crying anymore. I have laughter. I'm grateful. I love not being pregnant again. Like, I'm going to Pilates. Guess what? My passion for tango came back after a couple weeks. Now I'm back at tango and I feel sexier than ever. And I have a newfound level of self-trust that wasn't there before the pregnancy. It's like another layer opened up. And that's amazing. That's a gift. Is it strange to say that my miscarriage was a gift? If I had options of what kind of miscarriage can I have, I want the miscarriage that I look back on and think that it was a gift. I think that's the best case scenario where you're grateful for the experience. And that's where I'm at now. I wish for all of us to go through adversity and in hindsight to be grateful for the experience. I think that is the best case scenario where gratitude is your response to your hard life experiences. So whether it's a breakup or a divorce or a death or any kind of ending or some kind of failure or your business fails, may you get to a place in your life where you look back on it fondly and with gratitude. I wish this for you. What needs to happen where your endings were a blessing? I don't know. That's for you and me to figure out. So that's all. Please remember that in every experience, there is a positive and a negative. Don't go into life transitions expecting to only feel one way or the other. More than anything, you're going to feel a mix of emotions. Please create enough space inside of you, in your consciousness, to be able to hold all the emotions. The rage, the relief, the sadness, the humor. There's room for all of it because you're a messy human. And whether we're talking about miscarriage or anything that we could label adversity, there's enough room for it all. Please remember that. And that's it. I just wanted to let you know that, again, this was not a relationship anxiety podcast episode, but that's still kind of what I talk about on this platform. But I'm hoping I can talk about other things too, because I'm a human and relationship anxiety is not what my identity gets reduced to, hopefully. All right. Well, something I wanted to let you know is that we hit 150 patrons on Patreon recently. So as promised, I had Preston come on and we did a big long Q&A with my husband, Preston. So if you want to see a video of us interacting, and we had some great questions. I think there were some like, what's it like for you having your life on display, Preston? And people also asked him like what to do when a guy has a hard time expressing his emotions, how to get your man to be more vulnerable from a guy's perspective. It was a really great session. So if you want to watch that one, it's up pretty recently, went up this weekend. But also, I've moved to the next metric. When we hit 250 patrons, I'm actually going to be adding on another call. So once we hit 250, we're going to do 2 calls per month. We're going to have 1 call for Q&A. And we'll have 1 call for some kind of body practice, whether it's I'm guiding it as a group, or I'll do what I do in Both Feet In, where I partner you guys up and give you an exercise to do for the hour or for the hour and a half. So this is really, really cool stuff. I love Patreon. It's a great platform that's just a win-win for everybody because it's so affordable. You spend $5 to $9 a month and you get a community of support, learning the techniques that I teach in my one-on-one programs and my group programs. So really, really good. And also every week I post something that I find on the internet that I think needs more nuance and I add my thoughts to it. So it's a really great community. If you're not in it and you listen to this podcast, I think you can go, you can have an even more intimate relationship with me other than just listening to the podcast. You can actually talk to me and I can coach you for $5 to $9 a month, or you can watch other people being coached live. So it's really, really cool. Our next call is going to be Sunday, January 21st at 11 a.m. Pacific time. Also, between you and me, I offer special discounts to my patrons for things. So just know that. And so yeah, if we hit 250, we'll open up to 2 calls a month because, then it's really worth it to do that. And I really want to support my patrons in a deep way. The more people we have, the more it supports me financially to be able to offer you more. So it's just a really, really cool exchange. And just a reminder that Both Feet In is starting on January 19th. And this is going to be my women's group program for those struggling with relationship anxiety. If you're on the fence and you have a hard time trusting yourself in relationships, trusting yourself is a skill like any other skill. It's not something you just wake up with. So if you're waking up feeling dread in the pit of your stomach because you're not feeling in love with your partner, chances are you're not trusting your decision today. And I'd love to teach you the art of self-trust in partnership and the art of mindfulness in partnership. So if you're interested, I'll put the link in the show notes. I'll put the link for the Patreon. I'll put the link for Both Feet In, and check both out. If obviously there's only so much I'm going to share here on the podcast. You can go there and read all the details and the offerings. But if you're interested, check it out. Hope to see you. If you have any questions, feel free to send me a message on Instagram or email me, Natalie@anxiouslovecoach.com. You can ask me about Patreon or ask me about Both Feet In, and I'll be happy to help you out with that. But other than that, we'll call it a day. Let's see. I'm doing another late night podcast episode, 11:45 p.m. Time for me to go to bed. Hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have had a miscarriage in the past, I would love to know what you thought of this. Like you, I too feel like no one talks about miscarriage, but I really wanted to talk about it. And this has been such a relief for me. It's been so healing for me to be able to share this. And in a way, it's kind of like a diary. I can look back and listen to this and see what I was thinking at the time. Messy. I did tell you it would be messy. So if you've listened all the way through, thank you. Hopefully it's been healing for you. Hopefully it hasn't been too offensive. It was a horrifyingly beautiful experience. Not sure I'd wish it on anyone, but at the same time, if it did happen to you, I wish you to make the most of it and to allow it to deepen you. Hopefully it can be a deepening experience for you like it was for me. All right. Well, thank you for listening to me share such a vulnerable thing. I was nervous about sharing this, but after all your support on Instagram, you gave me the courage to open up about it, and I feel much better. So that's it. Thanks a lot. And I look forward to chatting with you next time. We'll get back to relationships after this. Talk to you soon. Bye. Thanks so much for listening to The Anxious Love Coach today. If you loved this episode, please hit that subscribe button, leave a review, and follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, and maybe share it with someone that you believe might benefit from these perspectives. Please also subscribe to my email list at www.anxiouslovecoach.com, as I'm trying to reduce my reliance on social media. In exchange, you will receive my free relationship anxiety meditation and more supportive tools sent your way. If you would like to work with me, head on over to my website at, again, anxiouslovecoach.com to explore different tiers of coaching options and online programs. Thanks again for listening, and catch you in the next episode. Have a blessed day.